Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I rise today to urge my colleagues to support Bill C-223, an act to develop a national framework for a guaranteed livable basic income. This bill, in fact, addresses many of the critical issues that we're facing today. And I hope my colleagues will join the NDP in voting in favor of this bill and moving it to consideration at committee. And before I go on, Madam Speaker, I'd like to remind all of my colleagues in the House, across party lines, every single party has committed to implementing all 231 calls for justice of the National Inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. One of the most key key calls to justice that is being advocated for to end the ongoing genocide against Indigenous women and girls is Call to Justice 4.5 to put in place a guaranteed income for Indigenous peoples and all other Canadians. My bill is just merely heeding that call, particularly in support of ending gender-based violence for all people, including Indigenous women. And this bill is essential, Madam Speaker, because we know that Canada's current social safety net has become totally inadequate. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Guaranteed income supplement for seniors. An income guarantee, not livable. Disability benefits, as we hear disability advocates lobby government across the country with this new disability benefit, once again, not being provided what is required to live in dignity. We have income guarantees in this country. My bill is actually not offering up a new idea. What my bill is doing, however, Madam Speaker, along with thousands and thousands, over 100,000 advocates across the country, is urging elected officials to ensure that everybody in Canada has what they need to live in dignity. And that's not happening, Madam Speaker. According to a recent study by Statistics Canada, 1 in 10 people live in poverty in Canada as of last year. 1 in 10. And we've also seen a disturbing rise in child poverty in recent years. Some of the poorest children in this country in an urban centre live in my riding of Winnipeg Centre. The poorest. And even though we've been talking about how to lift up people in Canada, nobody is putting something on the table that actually achieves it beyond cheap political sound bites. Ed Broadbent, in 1989, Madam Speaker, passed a motion to end child poverty by the year 2000. But here we are, Madam Speaker. Here we are taking piecemeal approaches to deal with poverty. Poverty that contributes directly to a gender-based violence crisis that has been noted in some urban centres as an epidemic. And we talk about families struggling to buy food, yet since 1989 and Ed Broadbent calling for the eradication of poverty in the year 2000, now in 2024, growing equality is increasing as we see growing disparity between the ultra-rich and those that are just barely making ends meet, if they actually are. We are actually, Madam Speaker, seeing a rise in the first time people become unhoused, families rolling onto the streets. Why? Not because we don't have a solution that has been studied, as I will speak to, but because members of Parliament have not joined in unity and political will to uphold human rights in this country, to uphold our Canadian Charter, and ensure that nobody has to live in poverty. Poverty, something that I have called one of the most violent human rights violations. And we want to talk about a mental health crisis? We want to talk about a mental health crisis in this country? We have one. And I can tell you, when you don't provide people with their basic human rights, housing, as my colleague from Nunavut brought up today, access to clean drinking water, food security, the ability to know that the next day that you will be able to survive, that is bad for your mental health. But we can do better, Madam Speaker. And that's why I put forward this bill, which would be provided for anybody over the age of 18 or over the age of 17, students, refugee claimants, temporary foreign migrant workers, kids that would age out of care into income security and housing, seniors in my riding that are currently on the verge of being houseless, would provide them what they need, especially women, many seniors who worked in the unpaid care economy, who don't have pensions, who can't live off what they get from Guaranteed Income Supplement. Is this how we want, Madam Speaker, seniors to live in this country? Is this how we want, Madam Speaker, children to live in this country? Is this how we want the disability community to live in this country, because we turn a blind eye to human rights violations, turn a blind eye to gender-based violence, turn a blind eye to ageism, targeting primarily women? And we don't have to.